From Kansas State University, this is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Ahead today, K-State's Dan O'Brien will talk about how the escalating trade disputes were reflected in yesterday's USDA grain supply and demand report during Dan's weekly segment on the grain market trends. Then K-State's Brian Briggeman and from the Kansas Cooperative Council, Brandi Miller will preview the 2018 K-State Symposium on Cooperative Issues and the KCC Leadership Roundtable, which will take place in tandem here on the K-State campus in August. Then from the Farm Service Agency, Rod Winkler announces that 43 counties in Kansas have now been released for emergency haying and grazing of Conservation Reserve Program acres. Followed by K-State's Mary Knapp on Kansas agricultural weather. On Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
You're tuned to Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. Welcome once again. The USDA shared with grain market interests, including you producers, more numbers yesterday in the monthly World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates, and some uniqueness to this report this time around, which we'll explain here shortly. Dan O'Brien is a grain market economist with K-State Research and Extension. He joins us now, as always, on a Friday from his office in Colby. This report purposely, Dan, accounted for the recent trade disputes and departures from the norm as it put together its numbers, you say?
Yes, and I think there's the obvious stage 1 issues that the USDA dealt with, but then also kind of a secondary things that are kind of based on anticipated responses to the current trade situation. And in particular, when you look at how these reports are playing out, you've got the anticipation likely of a response by South American soybean producers to their current high price situation that will probably bring about a market increase in their soybean acreage. Now, again, things can happen. Weather issues could come into play. We could have a solution to all the trade issues. But the anticipation right now, and as you look behind the scenes and what the USDA wrote up, their anticipation is that South American soybean acreage will increase quite a bit. If South American soybean acreage increases quite a bit, then there'll be somewhat less corn acreage. And of course, if they had great yields, all that, those acreage issues for corn may not be as much of a deal. But when you look at the adjustments that the USDA made in their supply-demand balance sheets for corn, they anticipated or projected. Well, actually, for this marketing year, they raised the corn export number by 100 million bushels from 2.3 to 2.4, and that's for the marketing year ending August 31st. For the next marketing year, they raised that projection by 125 million bushels, up to 2.225. So things are afoot in terms of what they anticipate. And we'll get to the issues that are showing up on the wheat side also, but we wonder about what are the ramifications of things like this on cash grain producers in the Midwest, particularly Kansas, on their marketing decisions. Well, what we're seeing here is basically not a situation where the bottom is falling out from under the demand in these markets. And the anticipation is that, yes, we have some movement around in terms of feed usage, but not cratering their ethanol usage, holding up decently. Again, some adjustments, but still at or near record highs. Exports really for corn anticipated to hold up decently. So the demand side is being forecast to provide some support, basically to hold corn market from falling off to new lows. So yes, there are tremendous concerns, great concerns in the ag commodities with regard to export issues, but the on the supply-demand balance sheet on the demand side, things are looking to hold up pretty decently. Mm-hmm. And really, Eric, as you and I have talked in the past, the market pays so much attention to these bottom line ending stocks figures. It wasn't that long ago we were looking at 2.5, 2.6 billion bushels carry out in this marketing year. It's probably where we're going to end up. Well, now we've lost basically 500 million of those bushels. Now we're down, by the USDA's estimate, to just over 2 billion for this old crop marketing year. And they're projecting for the next one, with acreage adjustments and strong usage, to be down closer to about 1.55. Again, another basically about 450 to 500 million bushels lower. If you get down to 1.5 billion bushel carryout, stocks use basically at 10%, then it exacerbates the response of the market to any type of a crop threat, et cetera. So with the moves we're seeing here, again, we don't see exactly tremendously exciting corn market prices right now, but the market is setting itself up for a more responsive, probably post-harvest recovery, at least the likelihood of that, I guess, in response to some of the trends that they're seeing now, and a lot of them having to do with this, I guess you could call it a distortion that's happening in the market in South America that'll pull acreage towards soybeans and tighten things up for the rest of the world, and probably giving an opportunity for U.S. corn farmers to take advantage of.
On the soybean side, as you're alluding here, there's very little promising or enthusing in most of the numbers, although you note, Dan, that the soybean export numbers appear to be brighter than anticipated.
Well, yeah, the USDA actually, in this marketing year, for all that's going on, again, for the marketing year that will be ending August 31st, they've come in and actually raised the quantity expected to be shipped in that marketing year up, basically about by 20 million bushels, up to 2.085. And when you go searching around to try to figure out, where that come from, we have shipments through July the 5th of about 1.85 billion bushels, but we have sales through August 31st of about 2.11 billion bushels, and that's, again, the USDA is only projecting 2.08 or 2.09. So, yes, some of those sales could get pushed off the next year, could be canceled, et cetera. But I think the reason the USDA raised their numbers is that, buyers have at least put their marks in to be able to purchase soybean supplies. And who are those buyers? Well, we see market reports of non-Chinese buyers coming in and seeing these low prices that have occurred with soybeans as a real buying opportunity. So the issue that we're seeing is a redirection or a shifting around of the flows of grain heading out of U.S. ports to different buyers, et cetera. And again, this distortion that we're seeing in the world market, i.e. a non-free trade, i.e. tariff-affected situation, is causing different buyers and sellers to see bargains over here or things they can't go at over there. At the bottom line of it all, hogs have to be fed. Soybean oil has to be used for human consumption. It's just a matter of the market figuring out how, in the most least cost efficient manner, to get the product to the place, to the plants, and to the people, and to the livestock that need to use it. And absent those base demands changing, we'll have to move product from wherever it's produced to where we can get it, to where the world can get it. And still, you've got three major countries that are producing soybeans right now: Argentina, Brazil, United States are the main players. Again, when Chinese buyers going specifically after South American beans, and with Brazil being the main target since Argentina's had a short crop, then you get situations like this with the USDA's broader national supply-demand balance sheets for U.S. grain sorghum.
And on wheat, supply side, the market is being suppressed, we were told, by a very good spring wheat crop in the northern plains. But on the other hand, the latest export numbers appear to be improving there. Well,
yes, the USDA left unchanged their projection of exports for the old crop marketing. Of course, that's passed for this marketing year. They actually raised it from 950 up to 975 million bushels. And we've had a slow start to this market year. So you ask the question, how can they be that optimistic given how we've been struggling? Well, there are problems in both Europe and in the Black Sea region in terms of their crops. And you look back to the years where we had strong wheat prices. When was it? Well, 2010 and 2012 when we had problems in the Black Sea region. And again, there's a fairly extensive analysis offered by, in this USDA projection of the dry areas that are apparent in Russia, parts of Ukraine, and also in France, Germany, etc. And the good part of it is that, again, it's very likely that if they have shortfalls there, that the world will come to find wheat wherever they can. It'll be probably to us here in the U.S. The sad part of it, and maybe sad isn't the word to use. It's we're not trying to express emotion on this, but the sobering part is that they don't come looking at the U.S. supplies apparently, or they're not inclined to until those other cheaper sources are threatened. So anyway, point being that some improvement in wheat export prospects, basically because of production problems off in these other areas where major exporters are, and we'll see if that gives us some better opportunities down the road.
Once again, reflections on the USDA's latest grain supply and demand numbers, plus a bit more, and you can read Dan's full analysis of the market reactions to those numbers at agmanager.info in his weekly market notes. Dan, thanks once again. We'll talk again next week.
Thanks, Eric. Take care.
You're listening to Agriculture Today, and we'll return in a moment on this, the K-State Radio Network.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
Welcome back. You're listening to Agriculture Today. Once again, the Arthur Capper Cooperative Center here at Kansas State University is teaming up with the Kansas Cooperative Council to host what really are complementary events toward the latter part of the month of August. This will be the K-State Symposium on Cooperative Issues, followed by the KCC Leadership Roundtable. They are back-to-back, and we have the two individuals who are largely responsible for planning these with us today. The director of the Arthur Capper Cooperative Center here at K-State, Briggeman, and the president and CEO of the Kansas Cooperative Council, Brandi Miller. We'll turn to Brian first of all as we walk through this series of events in chronological order. But before we do that, this is quite a partnership between the two entities, isn't it?
That's right, Eric. Thank you for having us, too.
Sure.
Yeah, the Arthur Capper Cooperative Center was founded in 1984, and it is a public-private partnership between Kansas State University and the Kansas Cooperative Council. So as many of your listeners probably know, the 80s were a little turbulent for ag, and so they were turbulent for farmer cooperatives too. So the many cooperative leaders in Kansas looked at, hey, we need to reach out and form a center of excellence to help us with research and education, and one that can really truly be a partnership. So the Kansas Co-op Council reached out to the Department of Agricultural Economics at K-State, and they formed the Capper Center. So since 84, we've largely fulfilled the land-grant mission of teaching research and extension for Kansas cooperatives. And this symposium and leadership roundtable is a great example of that partnership, especially through extension.
Really, Brandi, before we get into the agendas for the respective events here, these are the cornerstone events for the Cooperative Council and the center itself, aren't they?
This is one of many education and training programs that KCC does to provide outreach to co-ops across the state of Kansas. But this is a very important relationship and important program for us, yes.
Well, let's talk about the first part of it, and that is the K-State Symposium on Cooperative Issues. It'll get going very early, Tuesday, August the 21st. The Alumni Center on the K-State campus is the venue. Brian, is there a specified or designated theme to this year's event?
Yes. So as I was reaching out and connecting with many cooperative leaders about, well, what's on their mind and, what is the industry really thinking, and a lot of the other conferences and presentations that I have either attended or have heard, one thing that just continually comes up is this theme of market disruptions, of change that's happening. And many of the folks that come to this symposium and leadership roundtable are leaders within their cooperative, whether they're an employee, a CEO, general manager, a director, or others that work closely to cooperatives. Those tend to be the folks that come to these events, and it's open to anybody who's interested in cooperatives. But really to come up with the theme was more on, okay, how can we help those leaders lead through this change? There's many things that are coming at them from the overall economy, from changing employee base, to thinking about the future of our CEOs, who's that succession planning, and as well as the political environment. So there are many things that are coming at them as we were sitting down and thinking about that overall theme for the symposium. That's what we settled on for this year.
And then you have invited in experts addressing those very talking points, to put it that way.
Absolutely. So we look across the nation and try to bring in some experts that can lend their thoughts and ideas and really to kind of stimulate a discussion with everybody in the room. So we'll kick off with Terry Barr. He's with CoBank and does an excellent job on looking at the overall economy, what's happening here within the United States, what are things that are affecting farmers, cooperatives, on global trade patterns, just kind of that broad macroeconomic view. So Terry will kick it off with the symposium there. We'll move into a discussion with Professor Keith Harris here in the Department of Ag Econ. Dr. Harris does a lot of work with students here in the Ag Econ department, is particularly interested in, well, how can we better train our students? Or also ask, well, what are our students really thinking about the job market when they go out there? So he has done some research, in particular in the area of grain merchandising, and, asked students a lot of questions about, well, what is it that you're looking for? The afternoon is set up with a discussion on CEO succession. I know we have a number of Kansas cooperatives that are asking those questions about, well, what's next? We have a manager who's looking to retire, and wanted to bring in a couple of folks to talk about it from the Kansas perspective. Sarah Kepley with Pro Value will be talking about what she's seeing within Kansas and just kind of set the stage for the overall environment. And then we also always like to hear from other specific co-ops, and maybe a co-op that's not within Kansas. So we have Brent Erickson coming in from Growmark. Growmark is kind of a hybrid cooperative of a federated and centralized system based out of Illinois. He'll come in and talk a lot about how do they handle and approach CEO succession? It's a little different than many other cooperatives out there. So it's always interesting, not to say that that's the right way to do it. It's just good to hear a different story about how do we handle this CEO succession. And then we'll wrap up the day with a discussion on the political environment in Washington, D.C. Dr. Barry Flinchbaugh has agreed to come in and talk, and thank you, Eric, for leading that interview. We've done this for the last few years, and it's just a nice way to wrap up a symposium with no formal presentation. Certainly there'll be some questions, but if anybody has heard Dr. Flinchbaugh speak, we know there will be plenty of opinions that will be shared, and just about any question asked will be answered. Right. So that's the symposium that we've laid out. I think it should be an excellent time, and hopefully many folks that are listening will sign up.
It's well-rounded, that program, and that is what comprises the symposium on cooperative issues. Then that following evening is the event that bridges over to the Leadership Roundtable the next day, and Brandi, that is being called a kickoff for the roundtable, if you will. And you will have a special presenter at this as well, right?
Absolutely. So we're going to take a little bit of an off-ramp from some of the cooperative-centric and focused topics of of the day and even before we dig into some more topics the next day and really just have some fun. So we've invited Courtney Dehoff. She's an accomplished television personality. She's going to come and really tell her story. She's actually a native Kansan, and she has gone on to do some syndicated national television. She grew up on a ranch. She's absolutely hilarious, and I'm really looking forward to having her come in and share her story.
And then what will happen the next day as the KCC hosts its Leadership Roundtable? What's the program like there?
Certainly. So we were hoping to build something that really bridged the leadership through change focus, and we looked at kind of balancing perspectives. And as we continue to see the landscape of cooperatives across the state change, we wanted to hear from someone who could talk a little bit about previous perspective on leadership, someone who could focus on things that are happening today, and then also look at some topics that have an interest maybe in the future as far as co-ops are concerned. And so we're starting out with Dr. Michael Taylor, who's also an associate professor here at K-State, and she's going to talk about wheat basis, and she's done some research on some of the economic reasoning that's supporting some of the changes that we're seeing regarding wheat basis. So I'm looking forward to hearing that. And then we've invited Tedrick Hausch. He's with Lathrop Gage, and he's going to come and talk about blockchain. And so not only is he going to talk about applications of blockchain, but really he's going to give some fundamental basis of what it is, because some people hear that and they have no idea what that even means and what that looks like. But how does that relate to agriculture and co-ops in general? And so I'm really excited about his talk. Actually, he's done a talk for one of Brian's previous programs, and it was very well received. And then finally, Rod Schroeder, who is a retired ag executive, he's going to come and talk about his past perspective on leadership. And so his tenure in leadership, he was in the cooperative network as a CEO for many years. And so I'm excited to have him come and just share his story and really some of the things that he learned along the way.
Now, these are separate events, but they're being held jointly, and really that's the way to approach this, to take in the entire package.
Right. So, depending on your schedule, we would love it if somebody signs up and can attend both events, but there is the option of one or the other, and all that information is available on the Capper Center's website, which is www.accc.ksu.edu.
And there is a central registration right there, and for either or both, that's due on the same day, right, Brandi?
Correct. And so that deadline to register is August 7th. So we really encourage you to take a look and get signed up.
Well, it's quite a tandem of programs, once more starting on the morning of Tuesday, August the 21st, carrying over to Wednesday, August the 22nd at the Alumni Center on the K-State campus, beginning with the K-State Symposium on Cooperative Issues 2018 and concluding with the Kansas Cooperative Council Leadership Roundtable the following day. So we wish the both of you the best with these programs, and thanks for the preview right here.
Thanks, Eric, so much.
Thank you.
Brian Briggeman is the director of the Arthur Capper Cooperative Center at K-State, and Brandi Miller is the president and chief executive officer of the Kansas Cooperative Council. Once more, all details on these programs and registration procedures can be found at accc.ksu.edu, accc.ksu.edu. Deadline for registration once more, August the 7th. Agriculture Today is back in a moment. This is the K-State Radio Network.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State research and extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
Welcome back to Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. There's important news out of the Farm Service Agency, state headquarters for Kansas, we want to pass along. We're all keenly aware of the difficulties of this summer, the dryness and the heat around the state, and forage supplies have become ultra-tight in several areas of Kansas. Therefore, the FSA has announced the release of several counties in the state for emergency haying and grazing of Conservation Reserve Program ground. With this fresh word is Rod Winkler, a conservation program specialist with the FSA state office. Rod, you could maybe see this coming because of our dire situation in many parts of Kansas with forages that are short. And so this is one of the occasions where CRP will be available.
Yes, Eric, thanks for having me. The drought in Kansas has been severe. It's shifted basically from the southwest to the central northeast. FSA wants to take immediate action to help livestock producers who are running out of forage in their pastures. So we're taking this action as soon as we can after the nesting season as far as CRP. We now have the authority, once we reach July 16th, to release counties based upon counties reaching a D2 drought intensity level on the U.S. Drought Monitor map. And we had a significant number of counties that have reached that. As of today, we are going to be releasing 43 counties for emergency activity on haying and grazing, Eric.
Geographically, there are some outliers, but basically this area runs from central and south central Kansas into the northeast and east central part of the state, right?
Yes, exactly. And that's pretty much the area where the drought has focused and concentrated. We still have an isolated area in the southwest out at Morton County, but for the most part, the lion's share of those counties are through that corridor that you just described. We do have a small area in the extreme southeast portion, but the 43 counties, the majority of them, 95% of them or more, are going to be in that corridor.
So to remind what it means to have this release in place in a given county, this opens up the door for producers to gain clearance for haying and grazing?
Yes. Producers can go to a website. They can go to the FSA public website and go to Programs Conservation CRP, the Kansas public site, and get access to that map. So if they want to see if their county is released, they can go there, or they can also contact their local office. But any of those counties in that central corridor are basically going to be released. There are certain practices that are eligible for this, not the whole gamut. The continuous practices are not, but they have to make a request, make sure the acres are eligible. The first thing that's going to have to occur is they're going to have to develop a forage management plan or prescribed grazing plan, working with our technical agency, NRCS, the Natural Resource Conservation Service, and get that approved with the local FSA committee, and then they're going to be eligible to take activity. Now, the activity area cannot start until July 16th. We know situations are desperate out there, so we want to do this as fast as we can and get it to the producers.
So don't go into your FSA today, but this coming Monday, that opportunity opens up. And there are limitations as to when haying and grazing can be conducted, right?
That's right, Eric. Grazing is going to be available from July 16th through September 30th, through the end of the government fiscal year. Now, that doesn't make any sense as a livestock producer that it ends, but for purposes here, we have to end it on September 30th. And NRCS will work to develop that prescribed grazing plan and stocking rates. That'll be handled at the local level. For haying is a very narrow window. Haying is not perceived as being as beneficial, so there's a limitation on 50% of each field can be hayed, but the window is July 16th through August 15th, about 30 days, so the window is much narrower.
And the CRP contract holder can use the hay, but they can't sell it, and that's a very important point.
That's correct. If the CRP contract holder has livestock, then they're naturally going to use it for their own livestock. They cannot sell it, but they can, if they don't have livestock, they can lease the rights to hay it to another livestock producer.
So there is some latitude, but all of this needs to be fleshed out with your local FSA personnel. They can take care of all the minute details.
Right, they'll go through and they'll start an application, and they'll go through this list of some of these things that we talked to today. So, yes, that's all in the application process.
Very good. Well, we're not going to go through the entire laundry list of counties here, but we would advise you to go to the FSA website and have a look at the map to see if your county qualifies, or you can, again, touch base via phone or otherwise with your local FSA office, and they can let you know and then get the ball rolling this coming Monday the 16th. Rod, we appreciate you swinging over from the state headquarters on relatively short notice. Thanks for filling us in right here.
And thanks for giving us the opportunity, Eric. Appreciate it.
You bet. Conservation Program Specialist with the Farm Service Agency, that's Rod Winkler. Once again, 43 counties, basically from south central reaching into east central and northeast Kansas, have now been released for emergency haying and grazing of Conservation Reserve Program ground. There are some other counties, one in southwest, two in southeast, that also have been so released. Once again, this will be open for business, so to say, this coming Monday, July the 16th. Now, this week's Kansas Wheat Scoop. Here's Marcia Boswell.
Food bloggers have been sharing their stories about their farm-to-food experience with their readers since returning home from the Wheat to Bread tour last month. Kansas Wheat teamed up with Red Star Yeast to bring 9 food bloggers to Kansas during wheat harvest. With a combined reach of 5.4 million social media followers, these bloggers are sharing the farmer's story with consumers across the United States. The bloggers visited wheat harvest at Scott Van Allen's farm in Sumner County on June 12th. Each of them had the opportunity to ride in the combine with Van Allen and harvest wheat. Research has shown that consumers want to know more about their food, how it is produced, and where it comes from. By inviting influencers such as food bloggers to the farm, Kansas farmers are able to share their story with a broader consumer audience. Jenny Gehring, a farmer from McPherson County, also accompanied the food bloggers during the duration of the trip. Gehring was able to share her experiences managing 2 farms, one conventional and one organic, and tell tales of her family's harvest traditions. While in Kansas, the bloggers also visited Farmer Direct Foods and the Kansas Wheat Innovation Center. They had a hands-on baking experience where they got to complete the farm-to-food circle. Jill Ladd, a registered dietitian, was also on hand to talk about wheat's nutritional value. This tour was just one of many ways wheat farmers are sharing their story with consumers. Visit eatwheat.org to learn more and to read each of the bloggers' stories. For Kansas Wheat, I'm Marcia Boswell.
Thanks, Marcia. Next up, Mary Knapp on Kansas agricultural weather. You're tuned to Agriculture Today. Legal and financial concerns surround the day-to-day management of the agricultural industry. Producers, ag creditors, and USDA agencies rely on Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services. If you've received an adverse decision from the USDA or have an ag credit concern, call today 800-321-3276 or visit us online, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services, exploring options, generating solutions. Topping off this Agriculture Today, our regular look at Kansas agricultural weather. Mike's side once again is climatologist Mary Knapp of K-State Research and Extension. Well, Mary, just before the break, we spoke with the Farm Service Agency's Rod Winkler about emergency haying and grazing of CRP, that announcement coming forth, and that's related to the drought monitor, which has certainly worsened from last week's, has it not?
Well, it's been kind of a mixed bag of conditions. We saw some improvement in western Kansas, particularly southwest Kansas, but we saw considerable deterioration in the eastern part of the state, particularly in southeastern Kansas, where they moved into the D2 category, which is severe drought. And the area that was abnormally dry shrunk. Again, not surprisingly, given the distribution of the rainfall for this week. When we look at those by division, the Southwest Division was the winner in the rainfall sweepstakes, if you will, and that flipped from the Northwest, who had been the winner the week before. The Eastern divisions did not fare nearly so well. East Central was again the driest. They got an average of 0.02 of an inch of rain, which is about 2% of what they normally would see. So it's not surprising that we've seen a degradation in the conditions in those areas.
And central Kansas, there are pockets there as well, obviously. So it's pretty tough through, well, half the counties in Kansas.
Right. The central areas, some saw rain, but some didn't. It was a very spotty rainfall event. And we can illustrate it with the event that we had, or non-event, depending upon where you were.
We're in town, yeah.
Yeah, in Manhattan the other night. You could hear the thunder. There were lots of really nice big thunderstorm clouds building up. Campus saw nothing. The Ashland Bottoms Research Farm just south of the river near the airport saw 1/100th of an inch, and there are reports of as much as 3/10 of an inch just on the other side of that river. So again, the nature of the rains have been very, very spotty. Some encouraging news is the 6 to 10 day outlook actually calls for wetter than normal conditions. And when you look at the quantitative precip forecast, there are parts of the state, mostly the northern areas of the state, that will see an inch or more of rain. And when you get into that northwest corner, they may see as much as 2.5 inches of rain. Unfortunately, the southern tiers are not likely to fare so well. They are expected to at least see some moisture, but it's going to be more in the 1/4 to 1/2 inch of rain. Again, we're still in the time period where we would expect to see somewhere close to an inch of rain in the eastern parts of the state, 3/4 of an inch of rain a week in the western. So that 1/2 inch won't be as much as you would typically expect.
Still, there seems to be some added level of confidence in this rain opportunity. It may be the real deal for parts of Kansas that sorely need it.
Right. One of the things that we're looking at, and we've mentioned this before on our talks, is that the monsoon tends to trigger some events that move around, and they've gotten very active in the monsoon, particularly in Arizona, western New Mexico, western Colorado. Looks like this is going to continue, and that we're going to see some wraparound effect as a front comes through next week. Unfortunately, the wraparound is going to go mostly through Nebraska, but we will see some of the benefit from that. We're not seeing much of a Gulf flow that would feed into the southern parts of the state, but again, we can hope that that pattern will become more regular, where we get those northern frontal passages coming through and triggering some more widespread events rather than the convective storms that we've been seeing.
And accompanying this change on the moisture side, an easing back of temperatures, which will be a welcome for everybody.
Yeah, the milder temperatures, and we're not going to call them cool, they'll be more seasonal. They're looking at actually being close to normal for our temperatures in the next week to 10 days. But again, we're in July. That means normal's in the mid-90s for a high instead of in the low 100s. An easing back in the temperatures means that any rain that we see will have a better chance to be effective. When you've got the temperatures that we've experienced over the last week, we tend to have greater evaporative demand, and so you're just not benefiting as much from the rainfall as you might have otherwise.
And as far as the benefit of our livestock is concerned, an easing back of those nighttime temperatures will make a great difference.
That definitely would be. These last couple of nights where our temperatures have stayed in the mid-70s are very, very stressful for livestock and for humans as well. And so if we could ease those back into even the upper 60s would be a relief. And that is in the cards, hopefully, for next week. We should note that the week before, believe it or not, it was very close to normal for our temperatures. Statewide, we were only 1 degree and 7/10 warmer than normal, and there was actually cooler than normal conditions in the Southwest by a whopping 0.2 of a degree, which probably wouldn't be noticeable, but it's certainly an improvement from the previous week where we were looking at a heat that was running 6 to 8 degrees warmer than normal.
And the 8 to 14-day outlook takes us through the balance of the month of July. Anything different in that extended forecast, Mary?
In the extended forecast, it looks like the temperatures are going to drift a little bit closer to the warm side rather than being on normal, but it's equal chances on the precipitation. When you get that far out in the outlook, the confidence goes down a little bit in being able to predict what's going to happen. So that's kind of the trade-off that you face. One encouraging note for the fall is that they have continued to upgrade the chances for an El Nino developing, and they've moved those probabilities for its onset to be in the September-October range rather than the October-November range, which could be encouraging. Again, as we've noted in the past, when there is an El Nino, that increases the chance for a wetter than normal condition for us in the fall and in the winter. So there is some hope on the horizon.
It's time for a change. Sounds like it's checking in, hopefully starting this weekend. So, Mary, thank you, and enjoy your weekend.
Thanks, Eric.
Mary Knapp, climatologist, K-State Research and Extension, over from the Weather Data Library here at the university. And thanks to you as well for being along with us. Eric Atkinson here for Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.